I don't know if y'all can hear that, but it's raining. I don't know if you can hear that on the camera, but it is raining and there's a lot of wind. And so the weather that's supposed, I was talking about the Weather Channel was saying that there's a big weather event coming in. And that weather event's supposed to start today and it's supposed to go until about Saturday. And they were saying there's supposed to be about 3 or 4 inches of rain, 2, 3, 4 inches of rain during this weather event. So it's actually raining out there right now. And I'm supposed to have a good bit of rain over the next couple of days. And so yesterday I actually got my W-2. So I'm sitting in my living room right now. And yesterday I got my W-2. And I actually put $500 in my wallet. And I got $401 right here. I actually got my W-2 yesterday, and I put $500 in my wallet. And I bought gas and I bought some food. And so now I have $401. And the whole thing, I was kind of sitting here just kind of taking it all in. I was just watching some presentations on YouTube about, the stock of cattle and stuff like that this morning. Background in cattle. I was watching something from some university, some other university. I was watching a presentation on what they were presenting about background in cattle and stuff like that, and for 2024. And then I just kind of, because it's raining, so I'm not gonna, whatever. The cattle are doing okay. I'm only feeding them once at night. I'm feeding them once at night, and I'm giving them about 1% of their body weight, and they're cleaning it up. They're cleaning it up, and they're not cleaning it up real fast, but they'll eat about half of it, and then usually by the next morning there'll just be a little bit left. And so they're eating just about 1% of their body weight a day in a total mixed ration. So that's good. All right, if they're eating about 1% of their body weight a day in a total mixed ration, they're eating about 5 pounds of grain a day a piece. And some of them are, some of the animals are real small, and some of the animals are a lot bigger. And so as long as they're eating about 1% of their body weight a day, they'll probably be gaining about 1 pound a day extra on that grain. That's the whole thing about the grain, right? When I talk about grain, is like, why would I not feed grain, right? If I'm feeding an animal, if I have 20 animals and their average weight is 450 pounds, and I'm feeding them 90 pounds of grain a day, right? And, if I'm paying, okay, so if I have 20 animals and they're all putting an extra pound a day and the average weight is 450 pounds, then I'm putting on an extra 20 pounds a day across the herd by just feeding grain. And 20 pounds of beef, if you think about 20 pounds of cattle, excuse me, not, if I think about 20 pounds of cattle, 20 pounds of cattle is worth like is worth like I don't even know, 20 pounds of cattle at 450 is worth like $50. So I'm making $50 extra a day. And it's costing me, I pay, I pay $320 a ton delivered for the grain. So, I actually make money when I feed them the grain. All right. I make money when I feed them the grain, and the grain is also tax deductible. So why would I not feed the grain? Right. That's the big, that's the $1 million idea, right? It's like, why would I not feed grain if I'm going to make money on it? The animals get about 90%. They get about 75-90% of their diet on grass, and then at the very end of the day, I'll give them a little bit of grain, and then they'll just eat. They'll eat about 1% of their body weight, and so they're getting a majority of their feed intake on the grass. The grass is good, and then they're eating a little bit of grain and making putting on a little extra weight, probably about an extra pound a day, an extra 0.751 pounds a day. And I am definitely making a positive return on that grain, okay? So I'm not even worried about it. Why would I not feed the grain, right? And so I was sitting here just thinking about it. I was just taking it all in because, I was just taking a look at this money because, I put $500 in my wallet yesterday. And I got $401 left. And in 2 weeks, I will be paying myself again. I can pay myself whatever I need, right? I mean... And in all honesty, I could pay myself. I can effectively, the whole thing is, I can pay myself effectively whatever I need whenever I need it, right? I mean, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like this. Well, that's the reality of the situation. I can effectively pay myself more or less, whatever I need. And you got to understand that me, I don't really have like this super lavish lifestyle, right? I don't really care about. I don't really care for it. You know, I don't. If even if I paid myself, okay, even if I put $1,000 a week into my wallet, it wouldn't do. It wouldn't even. I would still be in the net positive for my business. All right. And a way to think about it is that in 2 weeks I will be taking animals to the market. Right. I'll be taking 3 animals to the market. And when I take those 3 animals to the market, I will probably make those 3 animals. I'll probably make like 6 grand, maybe a little bit more. After commissions and everything, maybe like 6 grand, $6,200, something like that. All right, I'll make like $6,000, and for me to buy 3 replacement animals, I mean, it'll cost me like 3 grand. So I'll be net positive $3,000. Net positive 3 grand, maybe even a little bit more, maybe even like $3,500. These animals, they're gonna be big. All right, I may actually end up making more than $2,000 an animal. And so, I can effectively just pay myself whatever I need whenever I need it. And even if I put $1,000 in my pocket every single week, it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't do anything. Not to my business. I mean, my business would still grow and everything. So, and I was thinking about that. And so I put $500 in my wallet, and I was like, I bought gas. I filled my truck up, and then I bought food, and now I got $401. And I was like, I said whatever, right? Because I mean, it don't really matter, because I get paid. I pay myself again in 2 weeks, right? I mean, so I took some of the money and I just put it in my wallet. I got my W-2 yesterday, my W-2 paycheck yesterday, and so I put some money in my wallet. And I was thinking about the whole situation and taking a look at it for what it is. And it's like, I get paid again in 2 weeks. There's no reason for me to really worry about it. I'm not gonna sit here and it's like my whole thing about my business right now is that my preconditioning pens are effectively completely full. My big preconditioning pen effectively has 17 animals in it. My small ones don't have any animals in it, but in 2 weeks, when the weather clears up, in a week and a half, 2 weeks, in a week and a half, when the weather clears up, I'll refill the preconditioning pens. And at that point, all of my preconditioning pens are going to be completely full. I'll have grown my business by 15%. And so I was like, and if I really need money, I can just go and take an animal to the market, right? The whole thing about the situation is that the animals are my money, the cattle are my money. So if I legitimately just need whatever, a couple $1,000s, I could just sell an animal, right? I could just sell an animal. A majority of my animals, I've had them since they were 200 pounds, 250 pounds. And as of right now, the average weight of my herd is probably about 450, 500. And half of them are smaller and half of them are bigger. And I definitely have animals. The animals on my lease property, the bigger ones are probably getting close to about 600 pounds already. The bigger ones are already probably at about 600 pounds. And here within a month, right, by the end of the month, they'll probably be closer to 675, 700, something like that. The average weight of the animals on the field over there are pretty close. All of them are pretty close. I mean, the average weight for the animal over there right now is probably about 550, and the big ones are probably about 600. So the average weights for the animals over on the other field are pretty close to each other. They're all pretty close. And so, I would actually say that, the average weight of them, I was talking about maybe I'd take them all to, I got to figure it out. What am I going to do? Because it's like, do I really want to take, 15 animals to the market at the same time? Because if I take 15 animals to the market at the same time and they have an average weight of 750 pounds, I mean, I would have to buy like 32 animals, right? And so it's like, I don't really have the, so I'll figure it out. And I actually, in terms of figuring it out, I actually figured out how I'm going to work debt into the situation, into my deal. I figured out how I'm going to work debt. I figured out how I'm going to work debt into the equation. So, okay, so, the whole thing about the payment in terms of me running my business, the whole idea of the payment is that I'm going to take so I have cattle and they're producing me a profit, and I will take 10% of that profit and pay it out as a dividend, and then 90% of the money is effectively whatever the big idea is to grow my business with that money. Here's the thing. I can also, so what I will do in terms of debt is when it is necessary, I will use that 90% or a portion of that 90% to pay off the debt. So in this situation, what's going to happen is that I'm not going to shrink the herd to pay off debt. I'm not going to shrink the herd to pay off debt. And so, if I shrink the herd, it's going to be to put money in my pocket, and then I will I'll pay out a dividend of that money as well. So it's not just going to be me putting money in my pocket. I will also put money into the pockets of the people who leased me their land, right? And so, but the 90%, that money, I can use that money to pay off my debt if it is necessary. So I can use that money to pay off a portion of that money to pay off my debt. And so effectively, that's just going to keep my cash flow steady. That's going to keep my business going sideways. And it will keep me producing a dividend return for the people who will lease me their land. And then the rest of the money, it's whatever it is that I need to do, right? Whatever it is that I need to do with the money. Because I've actually spoken about this. The whole thing about a business is like, it's like when you take a look at a business, the person who runs the business is effectively going to have the biggest influence on what happens to that business, okay? Because there are a lot of cattle farmers, right? There are a lot of cattle farmers. I'm sure that this person who leased me their land, if they felt like finding a different cattle farmer, they could find a different cattle farmer, right? But but the whole thing is that the thing with me is that the people, when you do business, or when it comes to business, the person who's running the thing is very important. All right, the head honcho, big boss is very important. All right, because if the person who's because, and think about it like this, like the person who leased me their land, if they decided to go and choose, I'm sure that there are plenty of cattle farmers that they could have chosen. Right, but there are plenty of cattle farmers out there, right? There are many cattle farmers out there. They could have chosen whichever one they wanted, right? And the reason that you do business with a certain individual is because it's in your best interest to do business with a certain that's the whole thing, right? And the thing about me is that I'm the guy who runs my business, right? I run my business. I effectively do 98% of it by myself. When you actually take a look at what I'm doing, I effectively outperformed the entire U.S. economy in terms of a solopreneur. I guess is like the in terms of like individual earnings. I'm not talking about corporate earnings. I'm talking about individual earnings. I effectively outperformed practically the entire U.S. economy. All right, I effectively, short of the very 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 top earners, I effectively outperformed the entire, more or less, effectively everybody. It was like something like 99.99999% of the entire country I outperformed. All right. And when you take a look at my financials, like even right now, because when I take a look at it for what it is, I'm probably net positive cash flow about $7,000 a month. I probably am. It's probably somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000. And also, I'm not liquidating all of my animals, right? I still have my animals, and those animals are going up in value. When I actually take a look at it for what it is, I am probably net positive about $10,000 a month. I'm probably net positive about 10,000. And that's after I've done everything, right? I grew my business. I put money in my pocket. I grew my business, right? Everything, right? I grew my business, and I produced a positive return, and and I can pay myself whatever it is that I need whenever I need it. I mean, granted that it's not like going to be like I'm going to go and buy myself a massive amount of drugs and go gambling. I mean, if it's like I'm just going to put $500 in my pocket, even if it's $1,000, Even if it's $2,000, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. The amount of money that I'm making is actually going up, and it's going up very quickly. All right, I'm actually making more money I've actually I actually grew my business. Last month, I actually grew my business by 2 animals, and within 2 weeks, I will probably grow my business by 4 animals, 4 animals. I probably will, right? I mean, I got 3 big animals going to market. They're gonna hit the scale at over 700 for the 3 of them. It's not costing me any more money. If anything, it's costing me less money. I've actually made my business more efficient, and my results are actually better. I actually managed I actually reduced the amount of money going into my business, and I increased the money coming out of my business. Right? And that efficiency has effectively increased my earnings by like 20%. I would say 20% is a realistic estimate for the amount of extra money that I'm making. Because of that, I actually increased the amount of weight that the animals are gaining every day, and I reduced the amount that it's costing me. I legitimately did, right? And I increased the size of my herd. I also increased the size of my herd. So, I'm doing very well for myself. And, even if I put $1,000 a week into my pocket, it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't do anything. My business would still grow. And, so I was like, I'm going to put $500 in my pocket. And I got $401 right here. And with that $500, I bought gas. And I bought some food. And I still got $400. And it's like, I can do whatever, I can do whatever I want with, I can do whatever I want. It don't really matter. I can do whatever, I can go and buy whatever it is that I want. But, I told myself, start putting some cash in my pocket, because, if I don't put cash in my pocket, and it's like, I think that it's like, for me, it's habitually become something where it's like, when I take a look at my bank statement, the only thing that I think about is buying more assets. I think that that's bad. And I was like, that's probably not a very, well, I don't think that that's bad. I mean, it's like it's whatever, right? But that's how I think I look at things. When I take a look at like my bank account, when I take a look at the numbers in my account, I immediately think, how am I going to buy more assets? And so I was like, what? If I put money in my pocket, that will put me in a situation where I actually go and I buy things that I want to buy, or not even just want to buy, but not just put the money immediately back into my business, right? Like, because that's effectively what I'm doing right now, is I'm just effectively dumping money back into my business, like all of it, and then some. I may actually be investing over 100. I'm pretty sure I am investing about 125 to 150% of my income back into my business. I'm pretty certain I'm doing it, because I also use debt. And I haven't used debt in about a month and a half. But I also use debt, and I am investing like 125, 150% of my money back into my business. And I was like, maybe if I put money in my pocket, and then I tell myself, maybe it'll just kind of break that habit. Because like, when I put money in my account, I immediately think, what assets should I buy? Should I buy more cattle? Should I buy more grain? Well, my preconditioning pens are full, and my animals are barely eating any grain at all. And in all honesty, I'll probably just start supplementing with the distiller grains here soon. And I have some distiller grains sitting in storage. And then, and then it's like, and then I just immediately start thinking about my business. Well, where can I put this money? I'm going to dump this money back into my assets. I need to accumulate $7,000. I need to accumulate $7,000 worth of more assets this month. And then it's like, and then it's like, just hold on a second, right? If I put $500 a week into my pocket, then maybe it will take me out of that situation where I'm just dumping my money back into my assets, because I can also utilize debt. And, and I figured out what I'm going to do in terms of incorporating debt into my business structure. And the whole thing about debt is that the 90% the 90% of the money that's left, I can use that money to do whatever it is that I need to do with the debt. And so that's effectively going to put me in a situation where I am running my business sideways. I'm not shrinking the size of my herd, so the dividend is effectively going to be the same. I will run my business sideways, and then I can use that capital to do whatever it is, pay off some debt, whatever it may be with the debt. And in terms of debt, I have decided that I am not going to leverage my entire herd. I am just going to leverage my earnings, just my earnings. So if I make $7,000, let's say I'm in a situation where I take a look at it and I say I make $7,000, right? I make $7,000 cash, but I take a look at my herd and I also say I believe that my herd has gone up by $5,000. I also think that my herd has gone up by about $5,000. I'm not going to go and take a loan for $12,000. I will take a loan for $7,000 because my earnings are seven. If I make $7,000, let's say I sell, on the average, I'm selling about 6 or 7 animals a month. Realistically, it's probably closer to 7. And so I'm selling 7 animals a month, right? And when I sell these animals, I make $7,000. I will leverage my earnings 1-for-1, but I will not leverage my herd 1-for-1. I will keep my herd as my safety buffer, right? Because if something goes wrong, let's say I go and I sell 7 animals and I make enough money to buy 14 animals, and so I leverage my earnings 1-for-1 and I buy 21 animals. Well, if something happens, and when I think, even then it's like, I can't even really even 21 animals, preconditioning 21 animals at the same time is going to be a pain. All right, I'm not going to do it here. If when I have better facilities, I can do that, but I'm not going to do it here. My preconditioning pens are all effectively full. When I sell my 3 big animals, I will still have 17 animals. Those 17 animals are effectively in the big preconditioning pen, and then 7 animals in the small preconditioning pens. And I'll probably only even do 6. All right, 5. I may even only do 5 at a time. And then, depending on how quickly the animal's preconditioned, I can let them out into the front and, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I may even only do 5 at a time and then just bring home 5 every 2 weeks, or bring home 5 the first week and then take a look, and then take a look and in 2 weeks, I'll go and take a look at it and maybe I'll bring home the other 2, or maybe I'll sell more animals and, I may even only do 5. But then that puts me in a situation where I now have $2,000 cash left over. And, in 2 weeks, I'll be paying myself again, right? And I actually grew the size of my business by 8%. Right? So, but I figured, that might be a good thing. This might be a good thing to do. Just put cash in my pocket, because if I have money in my bank account, like when I take a look at my bank account, the only it's like immediately my brain immediately goes into how can I buy more assets? What assets should I buy? Like, should I buy more cattle? Should I buy more grain? Should I buy more fertilizer? And it's like, I'm kind of maxed out on everything. My herd, my preconditioning pens are completely full. My animals are barely eating any grain. I even have grain left in storage. I have distilled grains in storage right now. My grass is growing, and even if I fertilize my grass, maybe I'll fertilize it at the end of the month, right? And what's that going to cost me? It's going to cost me like, I may not even fertilize my grass this month, all right? There's plenty of fertilizer on my grass, and et cetera, right? I mean, and so what now, right? And so do I just want to sit around, and so I figured I'm gonna put some money in my pocket. I put money in my pocket, and then and I told myself, I didn't tell myself. The reason that I did that was so that I can get out of this loop of just me constantly looking to buy more assets. Oh my gosh, should I put the money in the S&P 500? Should I buy more cattle? Should I buy more grain? Just take some money out of, there's still plenty of money left, right? I mean, I'm still net positive. Even if I put $1,000 a week into my pocket, it would not do anything. My business would still grow. And as of right this moment, I'm kind of maxed out. My preconditioning pens are completely full. My grain, I have plenty of grain. Right, my grass is growing just fine. My business is actually growing. I've actually managed to increase the efficiency of my business, the output of my business, and reduce my expenses. And that's probably going to increase my gains by 20%. And, I did that last month. I'm making a tremendous amount of money. All right, and the amount of money that I'm making is actually going up vertically. And so I said, just take some money just take some money and put it in my, just take some money out and put it in my pocket. And, and I can do whatever, I can do whatever. All right. Whatever it is, but I also don't want to be walking around with thousands of dollars, right? I mean, that's, but $500 is good. I should keep $500 in my wallet. Actually, that's what I'll do, because I'll keep $500 in my wallet, and the money that's in my wallet, I can do whatever it is that I feel like doing. But it's not going to be buying, and I hope that it doesn't turn into me buying more. Actually, that's actually a good thing. I'm actually not going to put more than $500 in my wallet, because if I put more than $500 in my wallet, I'm just going to end up buying cattle with it. I'm not going to put more than $500 in my wallet. So the money in my wallet is just going to be, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll go to a nice restaurant or something. I don't even really want to go to a nice restaurant. Maybe I'll go to a nice grocery store and buy myself some shrimp or something. I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to keep $500 in my wallet. I'm not going to start doing drugs, and I'm not going to start gambling it, but I'm going to have $500 in my wallet. That's something that I started doing. I'm going to put money in my wallet. And the money in my wallet is just going to be whatever, right? And I'm not going to put more than $500 in my wallet, because I don't want to be, walking around with $1,000. And if I have $1,000 in my wallet, I can almost guarantee that, I'll just end up buying cattle with it. So I'm just going to put just $500. And that can be whatever it is that I need to do. I can do whatever it is. Like yesterday, I bought gas and I bought food, and it cost me $100. Which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, things are expensive, but I mean, it's whatever. It's whatever, And even if I put so I'm going to keep $500 in my wallet. I'll actually go and put another $100 in my wallet to make sure that I have $500 in my wallet. But I'm gonna keep $500 in my wallet. That's something that I started doing, and I was really thinking about that this morning. I did it yesterday. I put the money in my wallet. I went and bought gas. I bought food, and I got $401 left, and I'll just go and put another $100 in my wallet. I'll just make sure I have $500 in my wallet. I'll keep $500 in my wallet, and because if I have money in my account, my brain just like immediately goes into buying more assets. It's like, should I buy more cattle? Should I buy more grain? Should I buy more fertilizer? And I immediately start thinking about dumping my money into assets. And then when I think about dumping my money into assets, it also turns into me utilizing leverage as well. And it's like, and it's like right now with the amount of earnings that I have, and the whole, and my whole balance sheet, right? I still, if I sold 7 animals, I would still have 28 animals left over, and those 28 animals are still profitable for probably 4 or 5 months, and they've already gone into the net positive. There is a net positive equity evaluation on those 28 animals, which I'm not going to appraise my, my total balance sheet. I'm not going to leverage against my herd, but I will leverage against my earnings. And I structured debt into the whole equation as well, and I structured it in a way that it makes sense. It's a very reasonable thing to do. It's a very reasonable deal, right? Because my business will effectively run sideways. I will pay out the dividend. I'm not going to shrink my balance sheet to pay off debt, and that cash flow, I can utilize that to pay off debt or whatever else it is that it may be. And when I am ever in a situation that if I have $500 in my wallet, I mean, there will probably not be any reason, for me to sell, 3, 4, 5 animals. I mean, it probably won't be. All right, probably won't be any reason for me to do that. But if I do that, then I will pay out a dividend. Actually, there is one situation where I was actually thinking about this, and I was like, it would be a good time to intentionally shrink my herd and then to pay out a dividend. That would be like in the summer when it's blazing hot outside. I don't have a lot of grass. I'm not making a lot of money, and I will. If there is a time to intentionally shrink my herd, it will probably be in a situation like that. In the summer when it's blazing hot. All right. Maybe I can intentionally shrink my herd by just a few animals, and that will make sure that I pay out a dividend, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't really even have to worry about grain costs because I'll be baling hay. And if I bale hay, when I bale hay, even if I can't sell it, I can just mix it with distiller grains and corn and feed it to my animals, and that will keep my expenses very low. I mean, like if I already have the hay, and and I probably will sell a good portion of the hay. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I can just undercut the market, and even if I make a small profit, I effectively just need to make enough money to keep my business, my expenses down for 2 or 3 months in the worst parts of the summer, and then before the winter time, I can bale my hay one more time. I'll probably get at least 2 cuttings of hay. If I plan for 2 cuttings of hay instead of 3 every year, I will probably get a substantial amount of biomass. It'll be good hay, right? I really take time and effort to grow this hay, and if I do that twice a year, then I can effectively just keep my expenses very low in the summer, and in the winter when my profits are low. And at a time like that, I could also reduce the size of my herd, pay out a dividend, pocket some money, and and then when conditions are improving, I can dump the money back into my business. But I've decided that I'm going to keep $500 in my wallet. The $500 in my wallet is going to be whatever it is that I feel like doing. I can do whatever. And I'm going to go and put another $100 in my wallet, and I will be getting paid again in 2 weeks. And I will be getting paid. I may even come home. Okay. Very soon here. Very soon. Realistically, I will not be getting paid every 2 weeks, but I'll actually getting paid every week. And I was actually thinking about this, but the size of my herd is growing. The efficiency of my business is actually increasing, and I am net positive cash flow about $7,000 a month. So, somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000 a month. And I'm not even liquidating all of my assets. Right? When I make $7,000 of net profit, total net positive return, I'm selling 7 animals. I still have 28 animals left. Those 28 animals have also gotten bigger, right? They have also, granted that I didn't have any animals die, they've also gotten bigger, and they will probably continue to be profitable for at least a few months, right? So, and that it's an unrealized gain, but there is positive amounts of equity in the rest of my herd. And, I'm not going to leverage against that, but I will leverage against my earnings. And the whole thing about debt is that I will utilize the 90% to effectively, float the debt correctly. And, but, the person who's running the business is like, is very important. All right. This is very important. The person who's running the business is very important. I'm the one who's running this business. And this is what I do with my business. And I make a large amount of money. I'm actually in the very top percentiles of the entire U.S. economy. And another way to look at it is that, I'm probably net positive. 10,000 might be a little low, but I just said 10,000 is a reasonable number. I am net positive $10,000. I'm net positive. Not even, that's how much money I make. That's how much money I have left over. And that money goes back into growing my business. And I invest probably close to 125, 150% of my earnings. I probably do. It might even be a little bit more it might even be a little bit more. But it's probably close to about 125 to 150% of my earnings gets reinvested back into my business. And I am net positive cash flow, in terms of just straight cash, about $7,000 a month. And that number is actually going up. But in terms of a net positive, in terms of like everything in consideration, I am probably net positive over let's just say $10,000 a month net positive. That's not my salary. That's how much money I have left over every month. And so I was taking a look at it, and I decided I'm just going to put $500 in my wallet. I'll put $500 in my wallet. I'm going to keep that money in my wallet. I'll go and take another $100 and put it in my wallet. And that's going to be just whatever, right? That's going to be whatever money, I'm not going to go and start doing drugs with it. I'm not going to go and gamble with it. But it's like, if I'm, whatever, right? Oh, well, I feel like, whatever. I want to go to the grocery store and buy myself some shrimp, right? Then I'll just go to the grocery store and buy myself some shrimp, right? Whatever it is that I feel like doing, right? I found a a good deal on a pair of shoes, right? Then I'll buy a pair of shoes, right? Whatever it is that I feel like doing with it, I can do whatever with it. It's just gonna be, it's gonna be money that I can spend and do whatever. All right, I'm not gonna go and do drugs. I'm not gonna go gamble with it. Well, if I want to buy some shrimp, I'll buy some shrimp. If I want to buy a pair of shoes, I'll buy a pair of shoes. If I'm, walking around somewhere and I see a nice T-shirt, I'll buy a T-shirt. I'll buy some pants. Whatever it is that I want to do, I will do it with this money, and I will make sure that there's $500 in my wallet, effectively, just all the time. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna develop a spending problem, right? I mean, that's just, me. I'm not gonna develop a spending problem. I'm not just gonna, if I decide, if I take a look at my situation, I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm using $1,000 a week, then I'll stop doing that, right? But I mean, in all honesty, I actually have a problem with the other way. I have problem, if anything, I'm not saying I have a problem, but if anything, I actually have a problem with spending too little money. If anything, that's my problem, and that's why I've decided that I'm gonna put $500 in my wallet. Because if the money's sitting in my bank account and I'm taking a look at it, my brain like goes into hyperdrive about thinking about buying assets. Oh my gosh, should I just buy the S&P 500? Should I buy more cattle? Should I buy more grain? Should I buy more fertilizer? And then it's like hold on a second, just put some money in my wallet. I can go and buy myself some shrimp, and I can go and buy myself a T-shirt, right? And then I can also do all the other stuff too, right? If I have the money in my wallet, and I don't have to go out of my way. Like, let's say I go to Academy, and I'm like, you know what? I want to go and buy myself some 9mm ammunition. And while I'm walking around Academy, I see a nice T-shirt. Then I'll buy the T-shirt while I'm buying the ammo, right? I'm not going to go out of my way to buy clothes and stuff like that, but, just have the money in my wallet and I can spend it, whenever it is that, if I go to Bass Pro Shop, right, and I'm looking at whatever, right, I'm going to Bass Pro Shop to buy something, then I already have the money in my wallet, and I can buy myself a T-shirt, and I can buy myself some pants while I'm doing it. Right, and then I don't have to go out of my way, and I don't have to think about it either, because I already know this is the money that I've designated for this. Right, I don't have to think about, oh my God, whatever. I already know that that's the money that's the reason that I have it designated for. I can go and buy myself a T-shirt while I buy myself whatever else it is that I'm there to buy. Right, and so that's effectively what I'm gonna do with the money. But the amount of money that I'm making is going up. I do very well for myself, and so that's something that I started doing, effectively yesterday. And that's it for me today. All right, YouTube, you have a good one.